What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon to some out there. It's the Earthmaster here on this Sunday. It is the end of the weekend, January 15th, 2023, about 10:33 a.m. here in California, where it's 51 degrees and partly cloudy out there. No rain expected today, at least for the majority of Northern California. A little bit of rain towards Sacramento a little bit later on this evening. The latest quake here looks like a 1.4 up into the Alaska area. Again, most of the activity, similar to the last couple days, has been clustered in a large group around the Indonesia area. Also some movement down into the Fiji region as well, into the Tonga Trench. Let's go ahead and check out the activity here across the map. We'll get to the space weather here in just a little bit. This is the most recent updated map here from the USGS, showing some further deep earthquake activity here around Fiji. Seen a 4.6 coming in well below 600 and about 610 kilometers into the trench area. Now, sometimes these can get pretty deep, and we've been seeing over the last week or so. Actually, we'll just go back the last 7 days here of earthquake activity, 4.5 and above, and we've seen a pretty good group of deep earthquakes here into the Fiji area. Again, that latest one at 4.6, 610 kilometers. Now, there has been some other quakes in here within the area, but more upstream towards the Tonga Trench subduction zone level itself, where it starts to subduct. A lot of times, strain builds up in this area. And with all this deep activity here into the Fiji region recently, just south of Fiji, we should be watching upstream, I believe, for some further possible larger activity. But again, I'm a little uncertain on if this has been built up as far as enough strain goes in the area of the Tonga Trench. And that's due to, a month or so ago, about 2 months ago, we did see quite a few 6s and 7s in here. So I'm not 100% certain that there's enough strain built up for some larger scale activity upstream. So when that doesn't happen and the strain continues to build upstream to the east here, we notice westward pressure movement here, like we've been seeing around the Vanuatu area, where there's been a pretty good cluster of earthquake activity. It's been kind of bouncing back and forth here between these two regions. Deeper activity here in the trenches, subsequent shallower earthquake activity around the Vanuatu area. Back and forth. And that will continue for a little while as long as there's enough strain built up in these regions. I still think we have a possibility of seeing something larger within the Solomon Islands area. It's kind of in a zone that is seismically dead, so to speak. But there is strain built up here, and it hasn't really been super active in terms of earthquake activity over the past few months or so. It's been kind of lacking some large-scale activity. So that's just one region, and looking at the map here, even today, that cluster is still continuing around the Vanuatu area, with a lot of movement over here around the Philippines, Indonesia area, Banda C. A lot of that activity, though, not being picked up by the USGS. A lot of it is some smaller movement quakes, 2.0, looks like 2.8, a couple 3s in there, and some other earthquakes into the mix, into that cluster of earthquakes. Again, that seismic gap zone here. Papua New Guinea has seen some activity. Remember, they had seen some activity here over the last week or so in this region. It's just certain areas here around Solomon Islands that little on the concerning side due to, no activity whatsoever. It's a little odd being squeezed in between all these active zones. So we'll continue to watch that. X marks the spot here for Solomon Islands. Now, New Zealand area, nothing showing up here on the USGS map. The EMSC model globe and GeoNet shows, looks like some 3s up here, and maybe even a 4.1 from yesterday in the Kermadec Trench. So for that, let's go over here to the GeoNet servers real quick and see what we have. 2.4 yesterday. Let me bring up the all magnitudes here. 17 minutes ago, 2.3, 2.5. Couple 2s this morning, it looks like, within the last couple hours. A couple deleted events as well. No major earthquake movement to note here across New Zealand. Just very typical, similar to like California or any other subduction zone level here. and a transform type boundary over here to the south, the Alpine Fault area. That's definitely been on my list here for some further movement, but we really haven't seen it as far as large-scale activity goes. Eventually, it will catch up. The volcanic drums out here. See, most of this activity looks like it was registered last night, but overall, general seismic activity on the minimal side for now around New Zealand. But again, westward pressure movement here, folks. This is the Fiji area right about here, not listed, but we got that subduction zone movement, pressure to the west, northwest here with the general plate movement of the Pacific plate. And of course, deeper movement quakes here triggering some surface ruptures here around the Vanuatu area, and of course all through the Indonesia region. But Solomon Islands just kind of lacking right now, but we'll continue to monitor that. Okay, now directly around the Philippine plate here, latest earthquake. Well, we've got a 4.9 down south here into the southern end of the Philippines Trench. It looks like 138 kilometers deep for a 4.9. Now in the Philippines, we did see a 4.8 earlier this morning, about 4 o'clock or so. So overall, definitely crunching here, so to speak, if I can use that word in geology, in scientific terms there. Crunching is the word. Either way, a lot of built-up strain in this region. Now, let's see what we got up here. Japan Trench did see a 4.9. We've noticed a couple deep earthquakes here around the Mariana Trench and the Izu Trench over the last couple days, and very minimal activity upstream as well. There's a couple different subduction zones around this plate, this little plate boundary. Deeper movement quakes, some shallow earthquake activity over here around Taiwan. Just a whole lot going on. Up here in the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, 65 kilometer deep, 4.7. That was early this morning, it looks like. And this is another seismically active zone that's been quiet. It's a seismic gap, so to speak. I do want to pull up real quick. Let's go and check out the magnitudes here. See what we've had. Since about, we can go back the last year or so. I just want to see what's kind of lacking. We can get a fairly good sense of areas that may be building up some strain. Of course, others take more time than other zones. What am I doing here? There we go. I just pulled up 6.0 and above over the last year to look at some areas that may be lacking activity. Of course, the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench is a big one there. Got to remember that westward pressure movement, folks. This is a major subduction zone, and the accumulated slip rate along the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench is great. One of the greatest around the Pacific Plate. Areas here along the subduction zone of the Cascadia, not so great. There's not a direct impact or a direct subduction zone interaction here compared to the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. You got two arrows pointing right together, massive plates all squeezing this area. So the strain is really great in this region. And same with areas around the Peru-Chile Trench. But this region right here should have seen at least a 6.0 by now in the last year, and it really hasn't. Nothing showing up here on the map. So, and it's been a while since we've had like a mega quake in this area, and they can get some big quakes. So this is one of our seismic gap zones, so to speak. Also, portions of the Mariana Trench and up into the Izu Trench are lacking activity as well. That's another seismically active zone. Should be subduction zone level, but not so much as the areas up here along the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. So a couple different areas we're watching. Around the Java Trench here, still lacking some 6-pointers, it looks like, in this section. This area does see some large quakes as well. And then Solomon Islands, let's see what we had here. We did have a 7.0 back in November of last year. And maybe that's why we're kind of seismically quiet for now. But that was about it, 7.0, and then prior to that, a 6.0 on the same day. So maybe it's building up some strain. Maybe it's not quite ready. Similar to like the Tonga Trench, as we've seen quite a bit of activity here over the last couple months and this year. I've seen a couple larger quakes. Seen that 7.3 back on November 11th, 2022. So, if I had to say any areas out here that should be showing some movement really quickly, obviously it should be the Crow-Kamchatka Trench or portions of the Mariana Trench area. Solomon Islands, yes, there is some regions here along the plate boundary that really haven't seen anything, and it has been fairly quiet through this area. So just because we had one 7-pointer out here a couple months back doesn't mean we can't see something else pop up along this plate boundary that's kind of got a little seismic gap on these sides as well. But just looking back over the last year kind of gives us a good indicator of where things could be kicking up, potentially up here into the Gulf of Alaska as well. No major quakes. Remember 2021, though, they did have an 8.1 up here. So not for certain, though, if this is built up enough for that type of movement again, though. Might take a little while. All right, let me go back here to the current map. Let's see what we got here for Hawaii. A little bit of activity south of Mauna Kea as well today. Looks like a 2.2. Very shallow earthquake up there. One earthquake off the north coast. 2.5, 9 kilometers deep. Most of the activity confined to the Pahala area on the Big Island today. Alaska looks like some very typical movement up here, and nothing really changed since last night. Looks fairly minimal, far as even the 2.5 and above goes. Pacific Northwest, awfully quiet. Not a whole lot going on. Northern California is still continuing that activity here around the Clear Lake volcanic fields. Remember, this is not volcanic activity in the sense that things are rumbling underneath the ground. These are earthquakes contributed to a process of injection of raw sewage below into the heated, obviously into the heated areas below to create some steam to create energy and to power some homes out here. There's quite a few of these hydrothermal plants out here, and there's a bunch of them. Either way, there's this process that they use by injecting that stuff down below, and it creates earthquakes at the same time. But I just ate, so I don't know if I want to throw up thinking about stuff like that. It just doesn't sound good. But either way, that's what's going on here in this area. This is not volcanic activity whatsoever, although this region is technically active down below the surface. These earthquakes are not caused by volcanic activity, but from the human-made process there that Calpine Hydrothermal Operations Energy Solutions continue to perform. Rest of California, pretty spotty. One earthquake outside the Long Valley supervolcano, 1.6. And the extreme southern Cal area. A couple small microquakes out here around the Borrego Springs. No major swarms. And no major noticeable uptick in movement across the west coast, considering all this water that we have out here, all this rainfall falling out here on these fault systems, filling up the reservoirs, putting some a little bit of weight out here on the North American plate and Pacific plate boundary. Again, it could take a couple weeks, could take a couple months to maybe see an uptick in earthquake activity following all this rain. All right, very typical out through Oklahoma and Texas. We do have some earthquake activity last night and today into the New Madrid seismic zone, mostly upper ones kicking off here. Just continuing to let us know that fault is active. Honduras, off the coast of Honduras here, seen a 4.5. That was yesterday. For the most part, everything looks fairly calm now. Not a whole lot going on. A little bit of return of earthquake activity in the Atlantic Ocean of 4.7 late last night coming in. But big picture, I would say all this activity kind of crunching over here in this region, and still really haven't seen a westward pressure gradient here. A lot of times we'll watch this train of activity trail across the plates here, and we're just kind of halted right now here around the Java Trench. That could definitely be a sign of something building here in those little seismic gap zones. Nothing going on across Yellowstone. Checked that this morning. Things fairly quiet there as far as the earthquake activity goes. Space weather, that's another story. Things are getting fairly active with these massive sunspots. Here's the latest imagery here, showing them rotating further into the Earth view. And a couple of these do harbor some potential for some large flaring. They're massive. They've been popping off quite a few M flares. Let's see what we got here over the last 24 hours. This is the last 3-day graph here. Notice at least 3 impressive M flares. I don't believe any of them have been directly Earth directed, but it's getting active. Definitely getting active. There's still a pretty good chance of seeing an X flare. We'll keep an eye on that. 15% chance for an X flare, and 60 for an M flare, 99% for C flare. Proton event with all these active regions facing us is elevated to about 25% chance. The SFI there on the solar chart, 228, fairly elevated. And there's all of our sunspots, quite a bit. So we'll continue to monitor that. A little bit of unsettled conditions there with the aurora currently kicking up on the dark side of the Earth, unlit side of the Earth, I should say. Over here around, looks like northern Russia. Areas starting to get into Greenland and Iceland as well. All right, folks, getting ready to do the drawing here. Got a few more things I got to do before we kick into that. I was going to do it at noon, which is only in about an hour and 10 minutes. So we're going to wait until about 1 o'clock. We'll probably shoot for a 1 o'clock time frame so we can get everything set up. And Missy Mimi's will be available as well. She's kind of busy right now, currently doing something, but she should be available around 1 o'clock so we can get that drawing in. Alrighty, have a good day, folks. Again, just kind of a little sunny out here today, drying up a little bit. There is a storm system coming in late tonight, but that's going to shoot down south, pretty much about Sacramento southward. I'll get another pretty good drenching of rain, but we should only get a couple sprinkles or so, maybe some light showers up here in Northern California. So a little bit of drying out time. All right, folks, we'll catch you guys back here for the drawing right around 1 o'clock p.m. That's going to be Pacific time. Take care.